Hello and welcome dear learners to the NPTEL course on Nutritional Epidemiology, A Way Towards a Healthy Life. In the Module 2, the study designs and epidemiological methods for the Chapter 12, we will be discussing about the descriptive epidemiology and data sources. As we have studied in the previous chapter with different studies and the study design, and in continuation to that, there is ecological study, cross-sectional study, applications of the descriptive studies, and the data sources for descriptive studies and the classical examples which comes with the different case studies and classical studies will also be taken over here. In the ecological study, as we say, the ecological study or a core study examines the relationship between exposure and the outcome at the population or group of people rather than an individual person. Why it is that ecological study comes with a lot of different design principles, it has a great strength and few limitations. Let us talk about the ecological studies more in detail, where the unit of analysis plays a very important role, where the groups and the country, religion, races, communities becomes very important when we are trying to understand the ecological studies, which has a greater value in terms of the population sense. Exposure and outcomes are more with an aggregate measures, which becomes a very important reasons to conduct the studies. The studies are often using secondary data sources, which plays a major role of importance of statistics into these studies. There are few types actually which comes as a very important is like exploratory ecological studies, multiple group comparison of ecological studies, and time trend studies of ecology. If I have to count the strength of the studies, it is like a quick and a very cost effective, which gives major reasons to put us a big data from the ecological studies. The ecological studies are important for hypothesis generation and even to prove or even to reject a hypothesis. The strength also counts to give usefulness when an individual level data is unavailable and you are able to put it through a group of people or population. The strength also encounters that it can study a large group of population in a set. The limitations are fairly less, where the ecological fallacy that a group level association and individual level association is very difficult, which makes a major reasons for the limitations to be counted as. Confounding difficult to control as data quality varies, and there is a question of data quality also when you collect a sample or it relies morely on the secondary data. Cannot establish causality, which is one reason that many times your hypothetical statement becomes very poor in terms of proving or establishing the causality. That is very important part for any research objectives to be coming as in strong. Now the cross-sectional study. Cross-sectional study are a snapshot of a single point in time, as we have studied in the previous chapter also, that one group of a population when exposed or an outcome which is simultaneously coming out is more a snapshot to be given of exposure versus a follow-up or a non-follow-up. The prevalence is with the odds ratio, which is giving more with the number of cases of a total group of population that is divided by. For example, smoking versus non-smoking, asthma versus non-asthma, diabetic versus non-diabetic. The design principles comes with exposure, unexposure, disease and non-disease. It is being taken with a total population or a sample group, where the cross-sectional data collection is becoming very easy when you are designing it with respect to the total population. Out of that, how many people are with prevalence in terms of the total population, you are minusing it by the total population, where in a genuine data. So it is more like be giving you a measure of an outcome. There are few strength and important limitations to be discussed over here. The strength is like it's very cost effective as the previous one, as we have seen with the ecological study, and effective and very quick in conducting the study. Identifying association with a non-causation gives a more important reasons for disease part to be understood. It generates a hypothesis as an idea where there is a causality actually which is not to be found. Ideal for assessing a burden is very important to say that how cross-sectional studies are being seen and are they being put as. Limitation comes with a temporal ambiguity, which is like exposed and outcome are sometimes not to be kept into the same balance, where non-suitable for rare disease conditions which cannot determine the incidence in the real proportion. And there is always a limitation which is very high to be counted as a selection bias. Time and cohort versus and the cross-sectional comes easily with time and the cohort. Now we'll try to understand what is applications of descriptive studies. As we understand, descriptive studies are more estimating the disease burden. There is a measure, the distribution and the frequency of the disease is being seen to be estimated and try to understand with the balance. The trend analysis gives us the monitoring changes in disease frequency over a period of time like months and days and years, and resource allocation with identifying the risk groups to the target intervention which is more focused, whether it is from the state or whether it is from the country. For a researcher, hypothesis generation comes as more suggesting a potential cause of a disease, whether it's a contagious, infectious or non-communicable. It is more form of being seen as a formal testing in cohort or a case control study. There is a benefit actually to be seen that it is health planning. Assessing the prevalence of the risk factor plays very important when you design a preventive program. And many of our health programs are coming with the benefits of this, where smoking rates, consumption, food pattern, intake of sugar and all those are being seen. Where it gives more emphasis to point out towards the benefit that comes from the studies are more informing the policy decision. It provides data to guide public health policies and intervention, which plays a major role of conducting the applications of the descriptive studies. For the data sources for the descriptive studies, you need to get with the 4 types in sub and majorly 2 at the primary sources. Primary data sources, secondary data sources. Survey comes very important to be seen as one and very important primary data sources, where a household survey where you directly go collect with a paper pencil or a self-administered questionnaire or a health behaviors and their outcome. And household surveys is a very popular way of dealing and conducting the descriptive studies. Interviews comes as a very subjective towards an individual person, where in-depth conversation to collect a detailed qualitative or quantitative information is being seen. And it has been also being seen as a second choice and very popular way of interviewing actually with the individual. Clinical examination, which comes with physical assessment, measurement, diagnostic tests and whole lot of biological, hematological and biochemistry tests, which gives more reasons for clinical examination to come in descriptive studies. Field studies, where the researcher's original observational data collected in the natural or non-clinical setting gives more importance to the comprehensive aspect of the descriptive study. Secondary data sources, as we have already identified, has a very important role in analyzing the existing data, where there is a lot of source of data which may be coming from census data, the national census which periodically counts the entire population, essential for the denominator. Denominator plays very important role, which comes more majorly to be given from the sources of the national census. Vital statistics, birth certificate, death certificate, which is the official record of the birth and death, which becomes a crucial for monitoring and mortality, morbidity and the birth patterns actually, which makes it more clear for a person actually how important the secondary data plays. Disease registries, which like a cancer registry which we have in India, the systematic data collection of data about a specific disease condition, whether it is a cancer or even a birth defects over a period of time. Hospital record, as in from hospital research importance point of view, the clinical data, discharge summaries, procedure in conduction of processes, IPD, OPD visits are very important to give you information for descriptive study. Surveillance systems, ongoing collection and analyzing the data, interpretation of the public health action, where tracking the disease outbreak is also being seen very important, and even in the COVID time it is also being seen as. These are the very classical examples of descriptive epidemiology, where the John Snow's cholera study in 1854, and very ancient and a very remarkable study, where in 1850s in London, Soho, the Broad Street pump actually, where the waterborne transmission demonstrated the mapping depths and the water sources. On a Broad Street pump actually, which was identified, and later this person has made a remarkable experiments actually to come across and has given a descriptive epidemiology which gave more reasons for people to go back and understand this study. Framingham Heart Study of Manchester, USA in 1948, where the Framingham Heart Study of more concentrated towards understanding the cardiovascular disease problem with respect to the risk factors which were identified more with LDL and HDL, smoking, food patterns actually, and measuring in terms of developing the heart conditions with respect to the generation and age group and gender aspects. 7-country studies of multinational diet and heart disease was being seen as a very remarkable and stepping stone actually for the multinational diet and heart disease, which are linked with the saturated fat intake into the coronary artery disease incidence. The countries were USA, Finland, Netherlands, Italy, Yugoslavia, Japan, USA. The heart disease mortality was being compared with respect to saturated and unsaturated fat. Increase in incidence of the heart disease was being seen as very important with respect to the saturated intake and has been seen as a correlation with the heart disease. Then was the NHA-NES type surveys actually, which are being seen as a very continuous US health and nutrition data, which has given us a reason like how the NHA-NES type surveys becomes very important for anyone to study for the continuous US health and nutrition data. Nationally representative health and nutrition data examination from gender point of view, from age groups, from specification of disease, and even for conducting the studies on a regular level. The British doctor study with respect to UK smoking and lung cancer in 1951 gave a major reasons of identifying the damage or a cancerous lungs versus to a healthy. Dolan Hill were the persons actually who made a major reasons to understand the time of exposure and even the lung cancer death rate actually, which are being very strongly linked with establishing the reasons of smoking and lung cancer, which has majorly given us these classical studies in a very descriptive epidemiology, which plays the reasons to put them into the classical studies. Now, there are a few case studies that I want to put in to you in short. Is one a very classical example of the case studies on AIDS in 1981, which was more on the homosexuals, particularly in Los Angeles and New York actually, which gave an importance to us. And later in India in 1986, there were also incidences of that, which was more towards developing of the conditions of HIV over there. The vaping-associated lung injury valley is more associated with the vitamin E, an exposure which causes more reasons for a person to give it of shortness of breath to a larger development of a disease condition, which is more towards identifying that how it has been seen something very distressing for a person as a vaping-associated lung injury. It's a sort of an allergens actually, which is making a great lung injury to specific reasons actually for an idiosyncratic causes actually of consumption of this. Malnutrition in India of NFHS has a very important role, as everyone knows that, and how despite of the economic development, Gujarat is not able to reduce the malnutrition, especially in children, where you find the incidences crosses more than 40%, where the stunting and fasting equally contributes actually to give it as a bad shape in terms of understanding what are the inclusions that we need to make with respect to the nutrition programs when you have to highlight for the malnutrition problems in our country. The obesity trends particularly to be seen as very important, and anemia in women, which are also coming as a very important when the NFHS tries to identify like how obesity trends are very much connected with the dietary, sedentary, and the lifestyle changes versus anemia in women are more with the particular and specific food choices or ignorance or lesser diet and more carbohydrates, and the reasons of how it is being seen very important and a major problem for women in our country is more with anemia. Urban air pollution and asthma visits are more with how the pollution is fueling actually to increase the incidences of asthma in our country, and pollution has become one of the major reason of COPD or asthma or lung cancer, which is increasing even in children and being seen the conditions that we are currently finding in our capital Delhi city, which gives us a reason like how this has been seen that our urban air pollution are giving reasons for children, particularly for their developmental challenges, and even are more dealing with their dietary patterns actually, which gives more disease conditions for them. The global burden of disease projects, where the disease projects are not only limited with the increase in pollution or even in trends, but even the major challenges are coming with the migrants, more with the agriculture food practices which are changing, yielding practices in the crop cultivation, and also the reasons of the climate change which are affected, and also the major concerns which are given as the disease is more towards the One Health concept. In this particular chapter at the end, I want to emphasize more on that we have studied the descriptive epidemiology in the bedrock of the public health, and the emphasis to give you that definitive establishing of causality due to limitations such as ecological fallacy and temporal ambiguity. It remains very indispensable for tracking population health. And where we try to understand descriptive epidemiology, focusing on the distribution of disease by person, by place and time, plays very important reason for us to understand descriptive epidemiology. Ecological study analyze the population level data but risk ecological fallacy, which sometimes put them as not a choice but as a reason actually of not rejecting it. Cross-sectional studies provide prevalence and association at a point in time, which gives us a reason that cross-sectional studies also gains more importance for a particular reasons when we have to pay more importance for prevalence. Data sources including primary and secondary data sets, where secondary data set studies are being seen more important for larger group of population, where primary data sets are more towards individualistic interventions. Essential for policy making, as we find a descriptive epidemiology to understand how it's benefiting actually that the nutrition epidemiology gains more importance towards making more policy, more coming into the program planning, and even hypothesis generation, which gives major reasons of health and the better outcomes actually. With this, we come an end to this chapter, and thank you for your patience listening. These are very few important references that are being put to help you out to understand the chapter more into detail. Thank you. Thank you very much.